The wind came howling out of the mountains like it had a score to settle, snow cutting sideways across the plains, blotting out fence lines, stars, and sense itself. Most folks were huddled by fires on Christmas Eve, but out on that open stretch of Wyoming range, the world was nothing but white fury. And somewhere in it, a woman was trying to walk through a blizzard that wanted her dead. Her boots broke crusted snow with each step, lungs burning, lashes iced shut, every breath a gamble. She did not know how far she had come or how far she had left, only that stopping meant sleeping, and sleeping meant never waking again. The wind screamed in her ears like a warning she could no longer understand, yet she leaned into it anyway, driven by a stubborn spark that refused to go out miles away. Tucked against a stand of wind-bent cottonwoods, Caleb Rourke sat on the edge of his bed, pulling on his boots. The cabin smelled of pine smoke and coffee gone cold. His 2 boys slept in the next room, curled under quilts their mother had stitched before she passed. The clock ticked loud in the silence. Christmas Eve had a way of sharpening old aches, and the storm made it worse, rattling shutters like bones. Caleb had planned to stay in, to keep the fire fed and the door barred, but something tugged at him. The kind of feeling a man who lived by the land learned not to ignore. He stepped to the window and peered into the white chaos, and for just a moment he thought he heard a sound beneath the wind, thin and human, a cry, or maybe just his imagination. Still, his hand paused on the glass. His jaw tightening, Caleb Rourke had ridden out into worse than this. He had pulled calves from snowbanks and hauled neighbors home half frozen. The range had taken his wife and taught him its lessons hard. He was a single father now. His world narrowed to keeping 2 boys alive and decent. Yet the code he lived by had not changed. Out here you did not leave folks to the storm, not if you could help it. He turned from the window, checked on his sons, brushing hair from their foreheads, whispering a promise he prayed he could keep. Then he shrugged into his heavy coat, buckled on his gloves, and reached for the lantern. Outside, the wind slapped him like an insult, but he swung into the saddle anyway. The horse shivering beneath him, ears pinned back. Ready to bolt, the woman stumbled again, going to one knee, snow already piling against her coat. She laughed once, a thin cracked sound, because crying took too much strength. Her name was Anna Whitaker, though out here names felt like things from another life. She had left a stranded car miles back, heater dead, phone useless, the road erased by drifting snow. Walking had seemed the only choice, the smart choice at the time. Now every step felt heavier. Her thoughts wandered to odd places, Christmas lights in a city far away, the smell of cinnamon, a song she could not quite remember. The storm pressed in on her, flattening the world, and she wondered if anyone would ever know where she fell. Caleb rode low over the saddle horn, letting the horse pick its way by instinct, reins loose, trusting the animal more than his own eyes. Snow packed his beard and brows. The lantern light barely pierced the white. Every so often he stopped and listened, counting his breaths, calling out into the wind, his voice torn away before it traveled 10 feet. Doubt crept in, sharp and cold, telling him he was chasing ghosts, that his boys needed him more than some imagined stranger. He pushed the thought down. The land had a way of testing resolve, and he had learned to answer it plain. He rode on, scanning for anything out of place, a shape, a shadow, a movement that did not belong to snow and wind. Anna saw the light.
Let me
before
go!
She heard the
I have to get out of here!
A faint
You can't.
wobbling
It's
glow
not safe.
that made her
No,
heart
please!
lurch. She blinked hard, afraid it was another trick of exhaustion, but it grew brighter, steadier, cutting a small wormhole in the storm. She tried to shout, but her throat scraped dry. She lifted an arm instead, fingers numb and useless. The strength drained out of her legs, and she sagged forward. The last thing she felt was a rough, gloved hand grabbing her coat, and a voice close to her ear, low and solid, telling her to hold on, just hold on. Help was here. Caleb hauled her up against the saddle, cursing softly at how light she felt, how still. He wrapped her in his coat, turned the horse into the wind, and began the long ride back by memory alone. The storm fought him every step, trying to peel them apart, but he leaned into it, jaw set, thinking of the fire waiting at home, of 2 boys asleep and trusting him to come back, of a woman whose life now depended on his stubborn refusal to quit. Christmas Eve had never felt so heavy or so wholly behind them. The blizzard raged on, uncaring, relentless, but ahead, somewhere beyond the white wall, a single light burned in a cabin window, and a man rode toward it with a stranger clutched to his chest. The wind howled its challenge, and Caleb Rourke answered the only way he knew how, by riding straight into it, with no promise but the belief that some things were worth the risk. Even on the coldest night of the year, the cabin door burst open in a rush of snow and wind. Caleb shouldered his way inside, boots slipping on the packed ice threshold. The horse snorted outside before he slammed the door shut with his heel, cutting the storm down to a distant roar. Warmth rushed to meet them, the stove glowing red, shadows jumping on the log walls. He laid the woman carefully on the table, hands moving fast but gentle, years of ranch work teaching him what panic could not. Her face was pale beneath frost, lips blue, breath shallow. He stripped off her frozen coat, rubbed her arms hard to bring feeling back, talking the whole time in a low, steady voice. Not knowing if she could hear, but believing it mattered, the boys woke to the noise. Small feet padding into the room, eyes wide and scared. Caleb turned just long enough to send them back, voice firm but soft, telling them it was all right, that he had things handled. They obeyed, though the older one lingered in the doorway, watching his father with a look too old for his years. Caleb fetched blankets, wrapped Anna tight, set water to heat. He had no doctor, no neighbor close enough in this weather, only what he carried in his hands and what the land had taught him. He checked her pulse again, counted slow, whispered a prayer he had not spoken since his wife died, and waited. Heat slowly worked its way back into her, color creeping into her cheeks like dawn over snow. She coughed once, then again, a weak sound but the best he had heard all night. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, fear flashing before reason. Caleb leaned close so she could see his face, told her where she was, told her she was safe. The words seemed to anchor her. She sagged back against the pillows, tears freezing on her lashes as they fell. She tried to speak, but he shook his head, pressed the cup to her lips, let her sip warm water. Christmas Eve ticked on outside the window, unnoticed by the storm. When she could finally talk, her voice came out thin and shaky. She told him her name, told him about the car, the road erased, the choice to walk because waiting felt worse. Caleb listened without interruption, nodding once or twice. He did not judge. Out here choices were often made with incomplete facts and full consequences. He told her his name in return, told her she would stay the night whether she liked it or not. The storm was not done yet. She tried to protest, worry lining her face, but he waved it off, said there were worse ways to spend Christmas Eve than by a warm fire, and meant more than the words later. When Anna slept at last, breath deep and even, Caleb sat at the table nursing cold coffee, eyes on the fire. The house felt different with another adult presence, fuller and heavier all at once. Memories stirred he had kept buried, of laughter shared, of someone waiting for him to come home. He pushed them aside, responsibility pressing down on him like the weight of snow on a roof. He was a single father first, everything else came after. Outside the wind still howled, but its edge had softened, as if even it understood this night carried something sacred. Morning came grey and brittle, light filtering through frost-etched windows. The storm had eased, but the cold remained sharp as a blade. Anna woke slowly, pain stiff in her limbs, but alive, very much alive. The boys hovered nearby, curious and shy. She smiled at them, gratitude swelling so fast it hurt. Caleb set food on the table, simple and warm, and watched as color returned fully to her face. They talked in halting pieces, careful not to step on sore ground. She learned about his wife, gone 5 winters back, learned about the boys, the ranch, the way life narrowed after loss. He learned she had been driving to see her sister for Christmas, chasing a promise of family after a hard year. By midday the sky cleared to a hard blue, sun glinting off endless white. Caleb saddled the horse, intent on checking fences and making sure no other souls were caught out. The land did not rest just because a miracle had happened. Anna watched from the doorway, wrapped in his spare coat, the boys flanking her like guards. She felt an odd pull in her chest as he rode out, tracks carving clean lines through the snow. She did not know what would come next, only that this place and these people had already marked her in ways she did not yet understand. Caleb rode the perimeter, eyes sharp for trouble, mind replaying the night, the weight of her in his arms, the way fate had leaned close and breathed cold down his neck. He had always believed Christmas was for children now, for keeping things steady and quiet, but the range had delivered him a reminder that even a broken man could still be part of something bigger. Tracks crossed his own from the night before, already softening under the sun, but not gone yet. Nothing important ever vanished that easily, By the time Caleb rode back toward the cabin, the sun was already leaning west, pale and cold, casting long blue shadows across the snow. The world looked almost peaceful now, as if the blizzard had never happened, but he knew better. Storms left marks you could not always see. He dismounted stiffly, breath fogging, and paused when he heard laughter drifting from inside the cabin. The sound caught him off guard. Laughter had been rare in that house, especially this time of year. He stood there a moment longer than needed, listening, before pushing the door open inside. Warmth wrapped around him, not just from the stove, but from the sight before him. Anna sat at the table with the boys, helping them carve small animals from scraps of soft pine. Her movements slower than normal but steady, her smile easy and real. The boys talked over one another, eager to show her their work, and she listened like it mattered. When she looked up and saw Caleb, her expression softened, something unspoken passing between them. He felt a strange tightening in his chest, half fear, half hope. He shrugged out of his coat and joined them, the cabin feeling less like a shelter and more like a home. They spent the afternoon in simple ways, mending a broken chair, stirring stew, telling stories that wandered and doubled back. The boys asked Anna about the city, about tall buildings and bright lights. She answered patiently, but she spoke just as much about the quiet things she missed. The way snow sounded different out here, the way the sky felt bigger. Caleb watched her as she talked, noting how she chose her words carefully, how she never complained about the pain that still lingered in her joints. She belonged to another life, he knew that, yet she fit into this one with surprising ease. As dusk crept in, Caleb stepped outside to check the animals. The sky blazed orange and pink for a brief breath before fading. Anna followed him onto the porch, bundled tight, the cold biting but bearable. They stood side by side without speaking for a while, the land stretching endless and honest before them. She finally broke the silence, thanking him again, not just for the rescue, but for everything after, the care, the shelter, the way he never made her feel like a burden. Caleb shrugged, eyes on the horizon, said it was just what folks did, but his voice roughened at the edges, because they both knew not everyone would have ridden out into that storm night.
This looks delicious, doesn't it?
Yes, let's
Stars
dig in.
sharp as
Can I
nails
have
in
some
the
more?
sky.
Of
They
course,
gathered
here you go.
inside for supper, a modest Christmas meal made rich by hunger and gratitude. Caleb set a small carved horse on the table for each boy, gifts he had worked on in spare moments. Anna reached into her bag and pulled out 2 wool scarves she had planned to give her sister. She offered them shyly, unsure. The boys accepted with wide smiles, wrapping the soft fabric around their necks. The exchange filled the room with a quiet reverence, a reminder that giving did not require perfection, only sincerity. Later, when the boys were asleep, Anna and Caleb sat by the fire, the flames reflecting in their eyes. She spoke of the life she had been living, a job that paid the bills but drained the days, a sense of drifting she could not shake. The storm had scared her, yes, but it had also stripped things bare, shown her how close the line really was. Caleb listened, nodding, understanding more than he said. He spoke of his wife, of loving her and losing her, of building a life around absence and duty, of nights when the silence felt louder than the wind ever could. The fire cracked softly between them, bearing witness when morning came again. It was Christmas Day, clear and bright, the world washed clean. Anna stood at the window, phone in hand. Service finally returned, messages flooding in, relief from her sister, worry from friends. She turned back to Caleb, conflict written on her face. She knew she had to leave. Roads would open, life would resume, yet the thought tightened her throat. Caleb saddled the horse and hitched the truck, practical as ever, helping her gather her things. They spoke little words too blunt for the weight of the moment. When the truck was ready, they stood by it, breath steaming, hands lingering awkwardly. He told her the road east would be passable by noon. She nodded, then surprised them both by stepping forward and hugging him, holding on like she might fall if she let go. The truck disappeared down the white ribbon of road, leaving only tracks that would soon fade. Caleb stood watching until it was gone, the boys beside him, one small hand slipping into his. He felt the familiar ache return, but it was different now, threaded with something warmer. He turned back toward the cabin, smoke rising steady into the cold sky. Christmas had come and gone, leaving behind more than memories. It left a quiet certainty that even in the harshest storms, even for those who believed themselves finished, the world still held room for mercy, for courage, and for beginnings worth riding into the wind for.